We're speaking today with Bo Burlingham, best-selling author and writer who has spent over 30 years in his career writing about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. He's a longtime editor-at-large for Inc. magazine and contributor to Forbes, where he recently released Small Giants 2017, America's Best Small Companies. His books you're familiar with: The Great Game of Business, that has sold more than 300,000 copies, the first management classic of the new millennium called A Stake in the Outcome, and Small Giants, Companies That Choose to Be Great Instead of Big. And we're privileged to have him joining us at Aileron's Lift Summit as our keynote speaker in just a couple weeks. So Bo, welcome. We're excited to get a chance to talk with you.
Well, thank you, Joni. Really, the privilege is all mine.
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot from you, I have no doubt. Can you just, in your own words, Bo, describe what a small giant is and kind of what led you to read or write that book?
Well, it actually, the subtitle pretty much says it all. It's companies that choose to be great instead of big. It's basically about it basically writes about sort of the central theme is that greatness and bigness have nothing to do with each other. They're totally different concepts, even though sometimes we tend to forget that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we're really excited for you to come. I think at Aileron, you're going to find a lot of small giants that have many of the factors that you highlight through your book: the leadership, the passion, the community factor. So I think it's going to be really fun for you to continue your research or even get a chance to meet some of our small giants.
Well, absolutely. To tell you the truth, it was really Forbes and Lauren Feldman, who I guess will also be at Aileron,
Yes,
who really opened up the opportunity for me to really expand on this theme. When he approached me about 2 or 3 years ago, I was still at Inc. I'd been at Inc. for 35 years, and he said, well, he had been my editor at Inc. and then he'd gone to the New York Times to create their
business
entrepreneurship and small business section, and then he'd been hired away by Forbes to do the same for them. And one of the things they had was a list that they called the best small companies in America, but it was sort of a pathetic list. It was, I mean, this was all public companies, and anybody who knows about small businesses know that it's a very tiny percentage that are really public companies. Right. And so Lawrence said that he told them that he felt that they should redo the list. And they said, well, how would you redo the list? And he said, well, the way that the criteria that he liked the most were those that I had used to select the companies in Small Giants. And so one thing led to another, and we reached a deal to do an annual list of Small Giants. We do 25 a year.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to us seeing some of our people on there, but also we enjoyed hearing about it from Lauren too, and seeing that. You list out several factors, Bo, of what makes this company great. And it starts with the leader. But one of the ones I thought was intriguing, and you certainly portrayed that as you described where you started in Ann Arbor, is the Mona Lisa principle. Could you just, what is that a little bit, and go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, that's a concept that I learned from one of the small giants, Danny Meyer of Union Square Hospitality Group in New York. He was from St. Louis, but he'd gone to New York and started a restaurant there called Union Square Cafe. And it was a huge success. And then he started another one called Gramercy Tavern. And those were his first 2 restaurants in New York, although he since started many more. And I would say that for like 10 or 15 years, those 2 restaurants were the number 1 and 2 most popular restaurants in the entire city of New York. And obviously the competition was very intense. So he was getting offers from people to open say a Union Square Cafe and lots of other places in Las Vegas or in hotel chains or in Los Angeles, and he turned them all down. And I asked him, why did you turn these down? These were great business opportunities. And he said, well, he said, I like to, he had a rule actually at that point, which he's since changed, that he wanted to only open restaurants that he could walk to in 5 minutes from his home.
Okay, great.
And I said, why'd you turn all these opportunities down? And he said, well, look, he said, I don't know a whole lot about art or how you display art. He said, but I do know that if the Mona Lisa were hanging in a different museum, in a different city, in a different country, the experience of going to see it would be entirely different than what it is today, where it's in the Louvre in Paris. And he said, the same thing is true of my restaurants. The communities in which they're located are an important part of what he calls the soul of the restaurant. And I thought that was a principle that I frankly saw in all the other companies that I looked at, which is that it wasn't only that they gave back a lot to their communities, which they all did, it was also that the communities sort of shaped their personalities. In other words, you take Anchor Brewing, which was another company on my list. It was the first of the craft brewers in the United States. It's certainly not true that you can't have another great craft brewer someplace else. But Anchor Brewing is part of San Francisco. It was started during the gold rush, and it's been through all the fires and earthquakes and everything else that's happened in San Francisco.
It's got heritage there, yes.
And it's really a San Francisco institution. You can't have Anchor Brewing belongs in San Francisco. I think everybody, it's been honored really as one of the principal institutions now in San Francisco. People say that when they come to San Francisco, they want to see the Golden Gate Bridge and they want to go to Anchor Brewing, which is frankly a good idea because not only do you get to see an historic place, but you get to drink beer at the same time.
Yeah, you get to feel that legacy. It makes me wonder, do you think that down the road could go beyond just geographic? So some of the examples you're giving are more of a geographic bound to create the community factor. What I wonder is, with all the online and the globalization and people being able to do business across the country, if it could be more of a community around a particular segment. So if I think about bike riders or different pockets of people, but maybe not geographically defined. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that you can have there are different communities out there, and they're all valuable in some way. I mean, I was specifically talking about geographical community.
Yeah.
With the companies in my book, because there's a fundamental difference when a company grows and it starts to open all over, in lots of different places. The dynamic changes. The goal is to have the experience in each of those places resemble the experience every place else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's that's a whole different. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are a lot of great companies out there that are large and all over the place, but it's different from what I was talking about with the small giants, where really the relationship to the community, to the local community in which they're located. Now, all of these companies that you're talking about, they exist somewhere. Mm-hmm. And what is a part of what I call their mojo, comes from their relationship with the other people that they're that comes from the relationships really with everybody they come in contact with. It comes in contact with their community, with their employees, with their suppliers.
It's this, it's kind of this tension between, what we do and how we want to be great. And the tension is with opportunity, and the opportunity is to go expand geographically or not. And I guess as you're describing it, I'm thinking even entrepreneurs who have like Harley Davidson, they've got a small niche of people that like to ride bikes in a certain way. They're
Right.
challenged with opportunities to go and now sell bicycles or other ways to expand. And it just seems interesting, that tension, because entrepreneurs are opportunistic people usually. So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic to think through. So,
Well, I should be clear in saying that when I defined the small giants, I looked at the qualities that these companies had in common.
mhm.
And I figured that was probably where this special quality that I write about in Small Giants, namely mojo, which I define as the business equivalent of charisma, that's where it was coming from.
Mhm.
That does not say that there aren't many other interesting qualities that a company can have, whether or not they have them in common with the small giants. It doesn't really matter. Harley Davidson is a great company, and there's certainly a community that it's created, which is extraordinary. But I would say that Cliff Bar, for example, is another company that has created a community as well.
Yeah, I would agree. So I have another factor that I think is really relevant as well for us, is you talk about the leadership factor, and I'd love for you to describe that a little bit, because we have really found going into conscious leadership has been really rewarding for a lot of our business owners and leaders, just to become more and more aware of who they are and where they want to go and what they want to be. And you've definitely highlighted that as well as one of the factors in Small Giants.
Yeah, it's crucial. It was crucial for all these companies I looked at. But it was interesting because I would go out and talk about it, and invariably somebody in the audience would raise their hands and ask me, well, all these companies are very inspiring, but it seems like the leader plays a very critical role. What happens when the leader isn't there anymore?
Mm.
And that really sort of led into my thinking about my next book, which was Finish Big, which has to do with, because every business owner sooner or later leaves their company. And they may leave feet first, but they're going to leave. Everyone leaves. And so the question is, well, what happens to that company after they leave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's going to be that's a great book that I think a lot of people would benefit. And it's actually one of the topics too at Lyft that we're going to start off with. And Ed Eppley a lot of times starts our course for presidents off as, what's your exit plan? And people find that really interesting to see that. So there's a session, which I think will be fun to have you as part of it, to be able to ask questions as well around that topic. What do you think might be a few key messages or takeaways that someone's going to hear after they hear you speak at your session?
Well, the main thing that I want people to come away with is this understanding that being great and being big are two different concepts. Different people will have different definitions of what a great business is, and that's fine. But the important thing is to recognize that they're different, and for companies to ask themselves, what do we consider a great business? What do I consider a great business? And I think everybody really ought to be asking, everybody in business ought to be asking themselves that question, because presumably people go into business because they want to create something that is really valuable and that contributes something great back to the world. And that's what I really want people to wind up thinking about.
Outstanding. And, you know, that's what I think I've loved about, I work now as an entrepreneur. I've worked with Clay and the IAMS company, and then with all these entrepreneurs for the last 14 years. And you realize that there really is such an intrinsic motivation that they have to do greater things way beyond dollars and profits. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. And we really look forward to having you. So
well, I look forward to being there, and I look forward to meeting these companies, since we're always on the lookout for the next 25 small giants that we want to highlight. And the truth is that usually in a year there are many more than 25. We just pick the 25 that we think we should put on that particular year. I mean, but you know, last year there were a lot of companies, there were quite a number of companies that frankly it was very difficult to exclude.
yeah,
We're hoping they'll reapply this year. And I'm hoping that I'll find some really new ones at Aileron, at Lyft.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sure. My pleasure.
Yeah.